Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube video. Are you tired of endlessly scrolling through MMORPG forums, trying to figure out which game is worth your time and money? Look no further, because today I'm going to be using ChatGPT to help you find the perfect MMORPG for you. ChatGPT is a large language model trained by OpenAI, capable of answering a wide range of questions and providing insightful recommendations. So sit back, relax, and let's get started on your journey to finding the ultimate MMORPG experience. Welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name is, of course, Csaw or Chris, and today we're going to be talking about MMORPGs in 2023. Specifically, we're going to be asking or talking with ChatGPT and trying to use it to figure out which MMORPG we should be playing in this day and age. And if you haven't guessed up to this point, that intro you heard before the cut was all written using ChatGPT. I asked it to make a YouTube intro for my video, I gave it the subject, and away it went. And it did a pretty good job. There's a lot of spookiness in this video, and if you're someone who is scared of the world of AI and where things will go, well, buckle up. I was looking through YouTube, and there's been a lot of videos about ChatGPT throughout the year so far, and being the noble content creator that I am, I figured, how could I get in on this? Could I bring this to the world of MMORPGs? And this is essentially, hopefully, what this video will be. So we're going to go through some pretty common questions when it comes to MMOs. We're going to see what ChatGPT answers, and we're going to unpack it at the end of this video. So sit back, relax, and hopefully you enjoy the ride. As we are comparing MMOs in this video, I will just mention that I am a Guild Wars 2 or ArenaNet partner. Does this mean I won't say anything bad about Guild Wars 2? No, I'll say the good, I'll say the bad, I'll say the ugly. I just want to make it very clear before we get into any kind of comparison talk. What it does mean is that there are 2 sponsored referral links in the description section below. If you use either of these links, it does support the channel. One of them can be used to make a free account for Guild Wars 2. The other can be used to purchase the expansions, and both of them do support the channel. So just keep that in mind. I am a Guild Wars 2 ArenaNet partner. However, ChatGPT, as far as I'm aware, is not one, but we'll see if that changes after this video. So let's jump into it. All right, and this brings us to our first question, which is one of the more common questions people ask whenever they're trying to get into the genre, or they haven't been playing an MMO in a while and they want to get back into it. Which MMORPG should I play? To which ChatGPT answered the following. There are many great MMORPGs out there, each with their own unique features and gameplay styles. Here are a few popular options to consider. World of Warcraft, this is one of the most well-known MMORPGs out there with a huge player base and extensive lore. It has a variety of classes and races to choose from, and a wide range of content to keep you busy. Final Fantasy XIV, this game has gained a lot of popularity in recent years, with a rich storyline and beautiful world to explore. It also has a unique job system that allows you to switch between roles on the fly. Guild Wars 2, this game has a strong focus on exploration and dynamic events that change the world around you. It also has a unique skill system that allows you to mix and match abilities from different classes. Elder Scrolls Online. This game brings the world of Tamriel to life in a massive online environment. It has a deep crafting system and a variety of factions to align with. Ultimately, the best MMORPG for you will depend on your personal preferences and what kind of gameplay experience you're looking for. Do some research, read some reviews, and maybe try out a few different games to see which one suits you best. And as someone who's made many different videos comparing MMORPGs, I have to say this is a pretty perfect answer, because it touches on a lot of the core aspects of the different MMOs, but it doesn't throw shade at any of them, and it doesn't make anyone in particularly angry. It does touch on 4 of what I would call the big 5 MMORPGs, which typically can change. I would think that, old school RuneScape should probably be somewhere on this list, but these are definitely 4 that I'd gravitate to. The only thing I will point out is that the Guild Wars 2 description, where it says that it also has a unique skill system that allows you to mix and match abilities from different classes. This one, that's kind of incorrect. It does have a unique skill system. And I think what they're talking about is the ability to choose like different utility skills from like a big bucket, but it's not like you can choose, a skill from an elementalist on a revenant or something like that. So I think it got that part incorrect, unless I'm understanding what it's trying to say wrong. Otherwise, though, I'd say this is a pretty good explanation, and it points out a lot of the strengths in each of these different games. Notably for World of Warcraft, it talks about, how big the game is and how established it is. For Final Fantasy XIV, it touched on the fact that it's grown in popularity recently, and that it has a really great storyline. Guild Wars 2, it talks about the fact that it has a focus on exploration and dynamic events, and that the class system is different, despite the fact that it might have got the specifics wrong. And then lastly, with the Elder Scrolls Online, it talks about how massive this game is, and that it brings the world of Tamriel of Elder Scrolls to the MMORPG space, which is one of the biggest things. The crafting system, it is deep, but I don't know if that's what I would, like, if there was 2 lines I was using to describe ESO, I don't know if the crafting system would be in one of those lines, but otherwise, a pretty good answer. Our next question specifies a specific type of gameplay. Which MMORPG is the best for PvE? And here's ChatGPT's answer. If you're looking for an MMORPG that excels in player versus environment PvE content, there are a few great options to consider. World of Warcraft, WoW has a huge amount of PvE content, including dungeons, raids, and world quests. It also has a long history of adding new content with each expansion, keeping players engaged and entertained. Final Fantasy XIV, FFXIV, has a rich storyline with plenty of challenging PvE content. It also has a unique party system that encourages players to work together to take on difficult bosses. Elder Scrolls Online, ESO, has a large number of quests and dungeons that offer a variety of challenge for players. It also has a unique scaling system that ensures content is always challenging no matter your level. Guild Wars 2, GW2, has a lot of open world content that encourages exploration and discovery. It also has a dynamic event system that keeps the world feeling alive and challenging. Ultimately, the best PvE-focused MMORPG for you will depend on your personal preferences and what kind of gameplay experience you're looking for. It's a good idea to do some research, read some reviews, and maybe try out a few different games to see which one suits you best. So this is once again a pretty decent answer, though I would say it's less of a good answer than our last question. I would say these 4 answers, like the 4 games it chose, are good choices for PvE content, but the actual activities it gives in each of these games aren't as up to date as maybe what a other content creator might provide. For instance, World of Warcraft is probably the closest to accurate with dungeons, raids, and world quests. I'd say this is probably because WoW has been doing that type of content for many years, and it's probably very well known online. Final Fantasy, once again, it touches on the storyline, which is great. It weirdly says has a unique party system. I don't know, what I would think it means by this that encourages players to play together is maybe their limit break system, because parties themselves is very standard in MMORPGs. What is interesting is it doesn't mention, dungeons, raids, and trials, which is what that's kind of the base answer that I would be looking for as someone asking this question. So it does an okay job. ESO is also kind of okay. It gives quests and dungeons, and I would say, that's mostly what's in there. I think they also have trials as well, which is a 10-man raid scenario. And then quests are a really good thing. If we were returning to that last question where I was summarizing ESO, quest is one of the things that ESO does best. So it is great that it's bringing this up as a PvE staple. Guild Wars 2, it encourages exploration. It is pretty similar to its last answer for Guild Wars 2. I think it could have obviously mentioned dungeons, fractals, and then strike missions would be the most recent. So if it had fractals and strike missions, it would have been a pretty good answer. But yeah, I'd say these 4 MMOs are good choices to recommend for PvE content. They are once again the last, what we saw in the last set of 4 as well. And then at the end of this, once again, ChatGPT does not specify which of these we should choose. It says, hey, you should try them out for yourself, which is what you should do if you're someone making a video about this, because you're going to get people mad at you otherwise. Every content creator will have a different way of saying this, but essentially at the end of the day, it's up to the player's choice, which I'm no means the video is kind of worthless, but it's funny that it is doing this. It's kind of making everyone happy with the answer, which is really fun to see. But let's move to the next question. So with the next question, I tried to get even more specific. Which MMORPG has the best raid content? And here's its answer. If you're looking for an MMORPG with the best raid content, there are a few games that stand out. World of Warcraft, WoW has a long history of offering some of the best raid content in the genre. Its raids are known for their challenging mechanics, epic boss fights, and impressive visuals. Final Fantasy XIV, FFXIV, has some of the most visually stunning raids in any MMORPG. Its raids also have challenging mechanics that require precise coordination from the entire raid team. Guild Wars 2, GW2, doesn't have traditional raids, but it does have challenging group content called Fractals that offers some of the most challenging encounters in any MMORPG. Elder Scrolls Online, ESO, has a variety of challenging dungeons that require careful coordination and planning from the group. While it doesn't have traditional raids, its group content is still highly engaging and rewarding. Ultimately, the best raid-focused MMORPG for you will depend on your personal preferences and what kind of gameplay experience you're looking for. It's a good idea to do some research, read some reviews, and maybe try out a few different games to see which one suits you best. So, a very similar ending to all 3 of these questions. Once again, this is a pretty good answer. It highlighted the same 4 MMOs. I'd say World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy have pretty good answers. However, you could definitely give a lot more description for raids in those games. Guild Wars 2 and ESO, however, are not very good answers to this question. I'd say it's true that both of them don't have traditional raids. However, both of them do offer more raid-like content than what ChatGPT has offered as an example. For instance, Guild Wars 2 actually does have something that were called raids, and these were launched quite a ways back, and were kind of phased out in favor of strike missions. So there's, a fair bit of information that could be provided. I think maybe strike missions are maybe too recent for it to know, but it should know that there were like 10-man raids back in the day. ESO, or the Elder Scrolls Online, once again, doesn't have traditional raids, but it does have I think they are called trials. I should look this up. But they are 10-man pieces of content that would be much more similar to raids than saying, hey, they have dungeons. So once again, not a great answer, but it does give you a little bit of an overview. And certainly if you were someone who was not aware of what any of these games had, you would probably believe this as an answer, which is maybe the most damaging part of this. So our next question, we tackle PvP with which MMORPG has the best PvP. If you're looking for an MMORPG with the best PvP content, here are some popular options to consider. World of Warcraft, WoW has a large, active PvP community with a variety of battlegrounds and arenas to test your skills in. It also has a ranked PvP system that allows you to compete for rewards and recognition. Guild Wars 2, GW2 has a unique PvP system that allows you to jump into competitive matches at any time without needing to level up or gear up. Its PvP content includes both large-scale battles and smaller-scale, more tactical fights. Elder Scrolls Online, ESO, has a variety of PvP modes, including large-scale battles and more intimate duels. Its PvP content takes place in a separate area called Cyrodiil, where players can compete for controlled fortresses and other objectives. Black Desert Online, BDO, has an open-world PvP system that allows players to engage in combat with each other at any time. It also has a competitive red battlefield mode that offers rewards and recognition for skilled players. Ultimately, the best PvP-focused MMORPG for you will depend on your personal preferences and what kind of gameplay experience you're looking for. It's a good idea to do some research, read some reviews, and maybe try out some a few different games to see which one suits you best. By the end of this, I feel like whenever I make a future video about MMOs, I'm gonna just without trying copy this last paragraph because it'll be just scarred into my mind. But the big thing for this answer is that it took out Final Fantasy XIV, which is pretty fitting when asked which MMO you should play for PvP. No shade at Final Fantasy XIV, but that is the one where you'd leave it off, and I'd say Black Desert Online is a good substitution choice for it, so I think that was really good. I think the answer for World of Warcraft is probably the best here, because it does give you a really good idea of what kind of PvP they have, but doesn't offer a tremendous amount of detail, so it's not wrong, which is good. Guild Wars 2, also pretty good here. A little bit vague maybe in terms of how the PvP gameplay goes, but really good in terms of not needing to level up or gear up, because that is a really key feature of Guild Wars 2. ESO, I would say, is also really good in the fact that it does mention Cryodil as a PvP place, because that's true, but it maybe doesn't give us as much detail as to Cryodil being kind of more of a world versus world experience, a big battles, and that, a lot of the other arenas happen kind of in these it's 3 or 4 versus 4 versus 4 matches. So they could have offered some more detail in terms of the battleground style, I think. Black Desert Online, BDO, is an open world system. I think it does a pretty good job. The issue here is that I don't play enough BDO to really know what's true. I'm pretty sure this Red Battlefield mode is it is PvP, I think, but I could be wrong about this. I'm sure someone in the comments will mention it. But it kind of has a similarity to the Elder Scrolls answer, where it's taken a specific name of something and kind of just injected it into the answer, which can work really well, but it's where it has the risk of being more wrong. Overall, though, I think a pretty good answer for this one. I'd say this is better than kind of the last couple questions we've had about raids and dungeons. So this next question is one that I usually try to answer in a lot of my MMO comparison videos. Which MMORPG is the best value? To this, ChatGPT answered, when it comes to determining the best value for an MMORPG, there are several factors to consider. Here are a few options to consider. Guild Wars 2, GW2, is a one-time purchase with no monthly subscription fee. While it does offer microtransactions for cosmetic items and quality of life upgrades, it's possible to enjoy the game's full content without spending any additional money. Elder Scrolls Online, ESO, has a buy-to-play model, meaning you purchase the game once and have access to all of its content. It also has a monthly subscription option that offers additional benefits such as access to DLC content and currency stipend. Final Fantasy XIV, FFXIV, requires a monthly subscription fee, but it offers a huge amount of content for that price. It also has a free trial that allows you to play up to level 60 with no time restrictions, giving you plenty of time to decide if it's worth the monthly fee. World of Warcraft, WoW, has a required monthly subscription fee, but it has a long history of offering regular content updates and expansions. It also has a huge community, making it easy to find groups for dungeons, raids, and other content. Ultimately, the best value-focused MMORPG for you will depend on your personal preferences and what kind of gameplay experience you're looking for. It's a good idea to do some research, read some reviews, and maybe try out a few different games to see which one suits you best. It's really weird that it's using this exact same statement at the end. You feel like it would switch up a few words or something. So let's talk about this answer. I think the first thing I want to mention is it says there are several factors to consider, and I feel like it should almost elaborate on what those factors are, because it feels kind of odd that it's there are some factors you should consider, and then it just goes into the options of the games. In terms of the list here, we have the 4 MMOs that we've seen in a lot of these answers, but we have them in a different order. And I'd say it is actually probably the order I would place them in terms of value as well, with Guild Wars 2, ESO, Final Fantasy, and then World of Warcraft. And I think that's pretty fair. Guild Wars 2, I'd say, is a pretty good answer. It touches on, the one-time purchase, no monthly fee, which is correct. It's possible to enjoy the game's full content without spending additional money is incorrect if you're counting expansions in that, full value of the game. So that one's kind of wrong, and that kind of applies to ESO as well, where it's, it's very clear that it's like a one-time purchase, but you do need to purchase the DLCs to play the DLCs. I think ESO's is pretty good considering how complicated ESO's payment model is, where it is like kind of buy to play, kind of has a subscription, but also has DLCs you can buy, like is the most options possible. And I think it's done pretty good at giving a reasonable answer considering that. Both Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft feel pretty similar in this answer, and I'd say that that's really good because they are very similar in terms of their, purchase plan. I'd say really the difference is if you enjoy one of their content more than the other, and that's kind of up to the player. So I think those are probably the most correct. The big thing here is that it got the order of the games correct, where I'd say Guild Wars 2 is by far the best value. ESO is kind of a messy middle, and then the last two, in terms of dollars spent per gameplay, is probably where you're paying the most. But it does offer a really good gameplay for Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft. The interesting thing for WoW is that like in almost every single answer, it talks about how big WoW's player base is, which means that it obviously has like data on the fact that it is such a big game compared to the other games, because it seems to echo that as a main reason it keeps recommending it, which is fair for MMOs, so really cool to see. Okay, so for our last two questions here, I wanted to switch up the way I was asking things, and this is often what people actually do ask, so I feel like it's pretty substantial here, is World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV better? Its answer, both World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV are highly regarded MMORPGs with dedicated fan bases, and each has its own strengths and weaknesses. Which one is better for you depends on your personal preferences and what you're looking for in an MMORPG. Here are a few things to consider. Lore and story, both games have rich lore and engaging stories, but Final Fantasy XIV is often praised for its strong narrative focus and well-developed characters. Combat. World of Warcraft has fast-paced, action-packed combat that emphasizes movement and skill rotation, while Final Fantasy XIV has a more deliberate combat system that requires careful planning and coordination. Content. Both games offer a huge amount of content, but World of Warcraft has a longer history and therefore a larger amount of available content. Final Fantasy XIV, on the other hand, is known for its highly polished content and consistent updates. Community. For both games have active and dedicated communities, but World of Warcraft has a larger player base and more established community. Ultimately, the choice between World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV comes down to personal preference, I should say. It's a good idea to try both games and see which one you enjoy more. Both games have free trials available, so you can test them out before committing to a subscription. And it's funny, because if you were ever to compare the free trial of WoW versus the free trial of Final Fantasy XIV, very, very different things. I should also mention, like, both of these games really have the end game being the primary gameplay loop for MMOs, and you can't try either of those with the subscription fee, or the free trial, so a little bit of an issue there. Now, that said, I'd say this is actually one of the answers I'm the most impressed with throughout the whole thing. Number one, you're treading very, very much through water, murky water here whenever you're comparing these two games, because there's a good chance you're going to get one of these groups pretty angry at you. If you're a content creator and you're asked this, there's almost no situation where you win too well. The thing I really like about this answer is that we actually see it choose one over the other in a few of these circumstances. For instance, lore and story, it says both of them are good, but Final Fantasy is better, which is what I think a lot of people would agree. Combat, it says that they're different. One is faster paced, which would be World of Warcraft, and one's more tactical, which is probably Final Fantasy. Content, both games have a lot of it. World of Warcraft probably has more because of how long it's been out. Final Fantasy has more polish, which is probably true in a lot of their patches. Community, both games have a lot. World of Warcraft has a bigger player base. So I'd say this is a perfect answer really when comparing the two of them. And I think this is probably one of the questions I've been the most impressed with throughout this whole video so far. All right, then for our last question, I figured we may as well do the other obvious comparison between the games we've really been talking about. Is Guild Wars 2 or The Elder Scrolls Online better? The answer: both Guild Wars 2 and The Elder Scrolls Online are excellent MMORPGs with their own unique strengths and weaknesses. Which one is better for you depends on your personal preference and what you're looking for in an MMORPG. Here are a few things to consider. Combat: Guild Wars 2 has an action-packed combat system that emphasizes movement and skill rotation, while The Elder Scrolls Online has a more deliberate combat system that requires careful timing and strategy. Content: both games offer a large amount of content, but Guild Wars 2 is known for its dynamic events and open-world exploration, while The Elder Scrolls Online offers a more traditional quest-based experience. PvP: Guild Wars 2 has a unique, well-regarded PvP system that allows players to jump into competitive matches at any time without needing to level up or gear up. The Elder Scrolls Online, on the other hand, has a large-scale PvP system that takes place in a separate area called Cyrodiil, where players can compete for control of fortresses and other objectives. Lore and story: both games have rich lore and engaging storylines, but The Elder Scrolls Online is set in the popular Elder Scrolls universe, which may be appealing for fans of the series. Ultimately, the choice between Guild Wars 2 and The Elder Scrolls Online comes down to personal preferences. It's a good idea to try both games and see which one you enjoy more. Both games have free trials available, so you can test them out before committing to a purchase. So we'll notice right away that the answer structure is very similar between this and the other comparison, meaning that when it's posed a question in a certain way, it seems to offer the answer in a certain way, which makes a lot of sense. In terms of this answer, I'd say I prefer the Final Fantasy versus WoW relative to this, but I'd also say, there's more clear-cut winning stances for World of Warcraft. Oh my god, for World of Warcraft versus Final Fantasy. The things I do like here is that it brought PvP into the mix. So it actually changed the 4 different categories that it was comparing and brought PvP. The answer itself for PvP, I feel like it thinks that ESO only has Cyrodiil, which is not correct. There are battlegrounds and stuff, so it kind of gives the wrong impression there. I think number 4, lore and story, saying, hey, if you like the Elder Scrolls world, you'll probably like the quests and stuff here. I think that's a really good answer, and that really lends itself to why the Elder Scrolls might be something people latch onto. Combat is interesting. Guild Wars 2, action-packed and fast, makes a lot of sense. ESO is well known for having a pretty bad combat system, so it's interesting that it didn't pick that up anywhere online. That's an area where I thought it was going to say, hey, Guild Wars 2 has better combat. It's kind of the same thing as saying, Final Fantasy doesn't have as much PvP as a lot of other games. Content-wise, both of them have a lot, which is great. And I think emphasizing the quests for ESO and then the dynamic events for Guild Wars 2 makes a lot of sense too. So some pretty good answers overall, but I'd say I really preferred the last one versus this one. And there you have it. Hopefully this video was illuminating. Certainly, I think it would become very repetitive if you were to use this to kind of generate your answers all the time. But it is really eye-opening in terms of making a base script for a video or a base script for any kind of project, really. It does kind of give you maybe how you want to structure your arguments and stuff like that. And then maybe some things you want to talk about because they're clearly searched by lots of people, and then maybe getting the actual details yourself and fleshing it out and stuff like that. So really, really interesting. I will also note that this was free. I had to make an account for this. I had to wait until it was kind of a quiet time of day to use it. If there's too many people using the service at one time, it says, hey, you have to wait because you're on a free account. But I made an account and I just used this, and this was free to do, which is really eye-opening in terms of how powerful this is and just wildly available for people. So I would definitely recommend checking it out if you're someone who's at all curious about this kind of stuff. And maybe it can help you do things that you want to do. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. A little bit different than a lot of the videos we do on this channel, though I will say definitely anchored into MMORPGs. And maybe you learned something about the different MMORPGs and which games should be better for you as well. Wouldn't that be great? But yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.